What if your biggest struggle with women isn't about you, but about what you've never been taught to see? What if confusion wasn't your fault, but a predictable result of missing the hidden patterns? Most men navigate their entire lives without this key, and that missing piece quietly drains their power, their peace, and their confidence. But there's a way to see clearly. The man who grasps this isn't just skilled, he's fundamentally free. This isn't about manipulation. It's about liberation through understanding. You're about to learn the unseen frameworks that dictate attraction and respect. If you've ever felt like you're working from a broken script, if your efforts lead to confusion instead of connection, this is your new starting point. We're breaking down the core principles that shift everything, but only if you're ready to look. If this hits a nerve, if you sense there's more to learn, do this. Leave a like, drop a comment, and share this. Let's get this insight to more men. Now let's begin. Why does seeing female nature clearly change everything for a man? And why do most choose to stay in the dark? Most men enter the arena of relationships unprepared. They bring hope, but not understanding. They bring desire, but not direction. This isn't about women being adversaries. It's about men lacking the essential guide. Understanding the feminine dynamic isn't just a nice skill. It's a critical form of intelligence for modern life. And this knowledge has nothing to do with games. It's about truth. When a man perceives what was once invisible, his entire reality transforms. Silently, permanently. Have you ever followed all the supposed rules? You were attentive, you were kind, you showed up, and yet the outcome felt disconnected or even powerless. That was no accident. You were operating on a surface-level script that ignores the deeper currents of human connection. Beneath the everyday conversation lies a landscape of instinct and pattern. If you can't read the terrain, you will get lost in it. Notice how some men, who aren't necessarily the most gifted, still command quiet respect and attraction. It isn't about money or genetics. It's perception. They recognize what others overlook. They operate from a foundational confidence that changes the energy of every interaction. This isn't about pretending to be an alpha. It's about aligning your authentic self with reality. Seeing women as they are, not as stories or wishes. That alignment is where the shift happens. Here's the hard part. Modern culture often discourages this clarity. From media to social norms, you're fed a comforting story. The price of that story? Your personal agency, your emotional stability, your ability to live by your own compass. But when you see past the illusion and understand how true polarity functions, something shifts. Women interact with you differently. Not because you change your personality, but because you removed your own blindness. Picture this. Try and read a book in a language you don't know. The letters are clear, but the meaning is lost. That's the daily experience for countless men. They see the signals but can't decode the message. When you learn the deeper themes behind feminine behavior, you stop being a reactive participant. You become a conscious responder. You operate from strategy, not from sudden emotion. That's the journey from lost to grounded, quietly, decisively. The reality is, feminine nature isn't random chaos. It's a coherent system, driven by deep-rooted instinct and subtle communication. The frustration starts when men expect women to operate by a masculine logic. They don't. That gap is where misunderstanding takes root and weakness grows. But once you comprehend emotional language underneath the words, the intent behind the action, you gain a social awareness that few ever achieve. With that awareness comes a natural influence. And this influence isn't loud. It doesn't seek attention. It's a quiet assurance, born from self-knowledge and inner stability. Women sense this energy before any proof is offered. They will unconsciously test for its presence. If your foundation wavers, you lose her trust. This is a difficult lesson many men learn through pain. But the man who studies this, who embraces a mindset of centered strength, begins to succeed without saying a word. Think about it. The man who seeks constant approval, who justifies his every move, who apologizes for his space. He isn't just less attractive. He becomes background noise. And he feels it. That's what happens without a solid inner frame. You become reactive, emotionally volatile, and easy to redirect. But when you stand in your own power, your presence changes. You don't plead. You don't pursue validation. You lead with calm certainty. And that alters how she perceives you, engages with you, and ultimately values you. There's an undeniable pull toward a man who is deeply centered, not loud, not putting on a show, simply rooted. That magnetism stems from emotional independence, not coldness, but maturity. You don't require her praise to feel worthy. You don't spiral when she creates distance. You understand a dynamic and allow space, because your sense of self is firm. That's the mark of a man of genuine value, not defined by extravagance, but by focus. Let me share a story. Alex was a classic good guy, always responsive, sending long messages, prioritizing her mood. Sound familiar? He was perpetually baffled by hot and cold behavior until he discovered principles of mindful awareness. It was a revelation. He began to focus inward on his health, his mission, his own psychology. In a matter of months, how women related to him changed. Not because he acted confident, but because he had built a core she could feel. Alex's path isn't unusual. More men are waking up to this truth every day. But here's the key: many will not. They'll repeat the same cycles, trapped in frustration or blame. That's the cost of choosing comfort over reality. But the man who chooses awareness, who picks growth over safety, becomes unshakable. Not because he avoids challenge, but because he comprehends it, channels it, and transforms it. That is true personal authority in a man's life. When a man reaches this level of understanding, women notice. They may not articulate it, but they feel it. You stop overreacting to minor tests. You don't unravel when she creates space. You see the behavioral rhythms and move with purpose. This is what occurs when your mental clarity masters your emotional reactions. You become the calm during tension, steady amidst drama, and suddenly she's drawn closer because most men react, but you remain still. Here's the real talk. This knowledge isn't common by design. If every man understood how feminine nature truly operates, the entire dynamic of dating would transform overnight. Manipulation would lose its power. People-pleasing would end. Men would act with clear intent. That's why this truth is valuable and why it's guarded. Once you learn the underlying themes, you cannot ignore them. And when you are no longer surprised by the feminine, you are no longer governed by your confusion about it. That is where real freedom starts. Freedom here doesn't mean avoiding women or emotional games. It means having full command of your inner world, your feelings, your choices, your limits. That's psychological sovereignty. Most men surrender it for a moment of attention, for intimacy, for the hope of belonging. But when a man chooses truth over the easy story, when he starts to see relationships through a lens of purposeful awareness, everything changes. He is no longer a passenger. He holds the wheel. Let's be absolutely clear. This is not about creating manipulators. It's about sparking awakening. Because when you are asleep to reality, you become a piece in a game you don't understand. But when you grasp the dynamics between men and women, you stop asking, why did she disappear? Or why does interest fade? You already know. And that knowing is power. Actual power. The kind that lets you disengage with peace or commit with purpose. That is rare. That is earned. This clarity lets you filter quickly. You recognize a woman who appreciates your solid presence and the one who challenges it to try and break it. You no longer build relationships on potential, on fantasy, on what you hope she could be. You lead from what is real. That's the transformation. From neediness to vision. From reaction to choice. From uncertainty to inner command. And believe me, women sense that. They respect it. They are pulled toward it. Not because of a tactic, but because you become something increasingly uncommon. A man who sees. And here, let's pause. If you're still listening, it means something here is connecting. That maybe you felt something was off, and now the pieces are fitting together. So don't just watch this. Internalize it. Let's spread this understanding. Hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel now, because what comes next goes even deeper. If you miss it, you might remain where you are. But if you stay, you'll begin to perceive what most never do. Let's continue. Once a man starts to perceive the dynamic clearly, he no longer has an emotional reaction to every shift. He doesn't panic when she goes silent. He doesn't decode every single text. That's the power of emotional mastery. Not hiding your feelings, but directing them. Your emotions become useful guides, not prisons. You lead from understanding, not from turbulence. That shift in your energy changes every interaction. It places you in a position of quiet leverage where you choose your response. And she senses that shift, even subconsciously. But here's the catch. The moment you step into this version of yourself, feminine nature will test you more intensely, not out of malice, but from a deep-seated instinct. The feminine probes the masculine to see if it's authentic. Most men fail this test. They collapse, they complain, they give up ground. But a man rooted in a core of strength doesn't waver. He sees the test and recognizes it for what it is. He's not putting on an act. He is congruent. That's the difference between a boy looking for approval and a man walking his path. You'll notice something fascinating as you embody this. How people communicate with you changes. Not just women, but everyone. You'll receive fewer requests that assume your compliance and more silent respect. That's the nature of real masculine energy. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't beg. It simply exists. You'll feel it in subtle ways. How you enter a space, how you maintain a gaze, how you state a boundary without over-explaining. And the people who matter, they will feel it too. It's easy to mistake this for ego. But real power is quiet. It's grounded. It isn't a performance. You aren't trying to become something. You are embodying it. That's what self-mastery provides. You've taken the noise within and created a calm, clear center. No more guesswork. No more chasing fleeting validation. You're building a life that isn't dependent on her affection, her approval, or her attention. That's personal sovereignty, and it unsettles those who are used to being able to sway you. This evolution doesn't mean you reject deep connection. Quite the opposite. It allows for a truer one. But now it's on a foundation of your choosing. You attract from a place of wholeness, not lack. You engage from a place of vision, not anxiety. And the women who come into your life now, they match your standard or they don't remain. Because your awakening has burned away your tolerance for confusion, for unnecessary drama, for energy vampires. You've raised your baseline. And the truth is, most people aren't prepared for a man like that. But the ones who are, they'll want to stay. When you stand in this level of clarity, you stop seeking closure from others. You become your own resolution, your own guide, your own certainty. You don't need answers from her. You don't need validation from a notification. You've internalized the truth that your power was never held in her hands. It was always waiting within your own inner authority, ready to be claimed. And once you claim it, everything transforms. Dialogues change. Energy changes. Attraction becomes a natural byproduct. Not because you commanded it, but because you radiate it. Now, don't think this means perfection. You will still face tests. You'll still feel the old pull to abandon your center. But the difference now is you notice it, you label it. You catch it before it gains momentum. That's the power of mental clarity. It doesn't mean you never feel emotion. It means your emotions work for you. That's a rare ability in a world where many men are emotional pressure cookers. But not you. Not anymore. You're learning to remain steady under fire. And that is true strength. There's something profoundly attractive about a man who doesn't flinch. A man who doesn't raise his voice to be heard, doesn't over-explain to be accepted, doesn't chase what withdraws. That's the essence of frame. It's silent, but it's potent. Women don't test him hoping he'll fail. They test him hoping he'll prove his strength. Because when you hold your center, it allows her to settle into her own feminine energy. That's the harmony of polarity. Done correctly, it creates peace, not conflict. Here's a truth you won't learn in a classroom. Most communication with women isn't about the words. It's about the energy. It's in the eye contact, the posture, the tone, the timing. If you rely solely on language, you'll always sense something is missing. But when you tune into the psychology of attraction, you start to hear what's unspoken. You see the subtle signs. You stop asking, what does she mean? And start understanding what's being communicated beneath. This is where social intelligence becomes your greatest asset, where silence communicates more than a speech ever could. Let's be honest. Most men fear feminine emotional depth. They see a wave of feeling, and either retreat or retaliate. But that's because they were never taught to navigate it. A man with healthy emotional detachment doesn't fight the wave. He moves with it. He sees emotion not as a threat, but as data. And because he isn't afraid of it, she feels calmer around him. That's a leadership mindset in action. Not about control, but about calm direction. She can relax because he isn't shaken. You'll find that once you live by these truths, life feels less random. The people you attract, the energy you hold, the way events unfold, they all start to align. Why? Because you are aligned. Your masculine core is no longer an act or an effort. It's simply your natural state. And in a world that often rewards the superficial, genuine authenticity becomes both rare and incredibly magnetic. You don't need gimmicks, practice lines, or mind games. You need clarity, intention, and the courage to maintain it when tested. There will be moments when you're tempted to revert, to seek the comfort of old patterns, the safety of seeking approval. That's normal. But now you see it happening. And in that space of awareness lies your power. You no longer act on raw impulse. You act from conscious awareness. And in that pause between impulse and action, you claim your strength. That's the heart of strategic living. Not reacting quickly, but responding correctly. You slow the moment down. You read the situation. And most importantly, you choose. It's at this stage that women begin to act differently around you. You'll see less drama, fewer unnecessary battles, and more genuine intrigue. They'll sense your masculine presence, not because you displayed it, but because you didn't need to prove it. That energy communicates louder than words. It's the difference between true presence and a performance, between leading and trying to impress. And trust me, women know the difference, even if they can't always put into words. You become the stillness in their chaos. That's rare. That's memorable. And just like that, the dynamic reverses. You are no longer the man chasing moments of validation. You become the man who creates the space where genuine connection occurs naturally. You embody a presence that doesn't demand respect. It inspires it. That's what psychological freedom grants you. Presence, power, precision. And it all began with one shift. How you see women. Not as a mystery to be solved. Not as a threat to be managed, but as a mirror. Once you understand that reflection, you stop chasing and start attracting. The man who sees a pattern is no longer controlled by his confusion. This entire journey isn't about controlling women. It's about no longer being controlled by your own lack of understanding. It's about moving out of fog and into clear sight. When you operate from a place of grounded knowledge, you stop taking everything personally. You no longer need to interpret every mood shift or validate every feeling. You become the man of substance who doesn't run from storms. He stands firm within them, calm, focused, unwavering. And in that unwavering calm, she finds herself leaning in. Your power was never in her hands. It was always in your inner authority. As you continue to master this mindset, you feel lighter. You don't carry the burden of needing to fix her or prove your worth. You don't overcommit or overexplain. You move with a quiet confidence, anchored in your inner command and supported by emotional mastery. That's what separates men who direct their lives from men who are pulled along by them. You're no longer on autopilot. You're intentional, precise, truly alive, and everything from your speech to your choices reflects this change. There's a moment every man reaches when he realizes, I don't need to be chosen. I am the chooser. And that moment changes everything. It's the dawn of personal sovereignty, the birth of real freedom. You stop participating in a game designed by others and start building a life of your own design. And women, they notice. They feel the change in your tone, your presence, your boundaries. You don't need many words. You simply are. And in today's world, being that kind of man isn't just unusual. It's transformative. So, if you've come this far, something within you has already changed. You're not just hearing words. You're remembering a truth. You're remembering what it means to own your power, to reclaim your sight, and to see women not as unsolvable puzzles, but as understandable patterns. Patterns that no longer leave you bewildered, because now you see. And as the saying goes, the man who sees this is free. You have the guide now. No more speculation. No more walking blind into situations that steal your confidence, drain your spirit, or make you question your value. But here's the real question. What will you do with this site? Will you step into your role as a man of psychological freedom and purposeful action? Or will you return to chasing mirages and doubting every step? Tell me in the comments right now. Right now I see. Let that be your declaration, your point of no return. Thank you for staying with this message to the end. That already puts you in the small percentage of men willing to look beneath the surface, to go the distance, and to grow beyond the distraction. I respect that commitment, and you should too. Now, if anything here connected with you, even a single idea, please like the video, send it to a friend who needs to hear it, subscribe, and turn on notifications for winds of thought. This is the content that changes how men move through the world. Let's keep building together.